It's,
Yeah.
the light
Okay,
is,
you got my notes there. I emailed them to you or a few days ago,
You sent by email? I have not checked. I'm
or
going to check it.
You're looking a bad guy.
huh?
okay.
You're
You look-
looking like a bad guy.
And you'll need a pen and paper because you're going to have to do a lot of notes. If you have your mind made up, as I was told from other classes, that some of you already had all the stuff we taught. If that's the case, you're welcome to go anytime. And because this is going to take a lot of notes. Counseling is not that easy study. And I'm going beyond pastoral counseling. I'm going to go into the heart of some things on crisis counseling, and then I'm going to start today on introduction to counseling. And so you'll need, you'll be taking notes. I sent the outline for the next few days. I sent that to you. I forget what day it was. I think 3 days ago. So do you all have your laptops?
yeah.
Yes.
Okay. And then one other thing I want to get started or find out first is I'm looking at November 26th as the last day for this study until the new year. And let's see. No, I'm sorry. We'll stop on the November 26th. Oh, no.
Thursday.
Disregard all that. I will be looking at your notes and some questions. I'll explain that in a minute. I'll be looking at questions on November 26th. We will quit on December 17th or the 10th or the 17th. I'll leave that up to you. We will quit for the rest of the year, December 10 or 17. So I need to know so I can make my plans.
17.
The 17th?
Yes.
Okay. So here's the deal. On November 26th, I'll be looking at a list of questions. I'll explain in a little bit on November 26th. Then on December 17th, we will quit for the rest of the year. And I'll be sending you a lot of different material to read. You're going to be, if you're going to do any good, you're going to be putting in at least 1 hour a day in study. At least that. So that may be something that you may not want to do. And so now's a good time to just go do something else besides be here as class. So because the counseling studies are very involved, and counseling, and you're going to get into that. Now, some of you, I don't know what all you want out of this class, but I'm going on to the idea that you are going to be able to help people in your community, and that people will come and it's a great opportunity to lead people to Christ. And so then the other thing I want to mention is make a list of questions And I'll look at that on November 26th. A list of questions. And questions are that you have, one of the things about in counseling is you may use anywhere from 10 to 50 questions per session. And so you need to practice what kind of questions to ask. And so I'll be looking at that list on November 26th and see how you're doing. So that, making your list, you need to start tomorrow. Making a list of questions that you want to ask people for different situations. Just use your imagination, what the condition is, and then what's your question. And anyway, take a lot of notes. This is very important. And I hope to be able somehow to check on your note taking, because if you don't take notes, you're not going to do very well. And you might as well stop it now, because this is how you will respond to a client that comes in there to see you. So all of these things are very important. So I also understand I have 1 hour with you. Is that true?
Mm.
Okay. I guess.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay.
But if you do some, if you will become tired of the discussion, then we can end around 45 minutes.
Okay, 45 minutes?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So in other words,
Yes, we
by
can.
9 o'clock. Let's see, it'd be 10 o'clock your time. Okay. Will do. I sent this papers to you. I think it's 12 or 13 pages for this. Well, the way I'm going to approach this is I'm going to look at just simply some introductory ideas for counseling. And when this one is done, then I'm going to go to crisis counseling. I felt we need to do this because I started some of this with Lot and Eliezer. We never finished that, but the others would not have this study. So that's what we're going to do today to get a good idea about counseling and so on. So what we hope to be leading up to, and before I'm done counseling, not today, when the whole thing is done, we'll be discussing we'll discover what is normal and what is abnormal. That we find in trying to fix difficult issues. One of the things is that it needs to be understood what is normal and what is abnormal. And you have that like in the Filipinos. I know some from maybe like Bacolod or someplace, went to Manila and could not live in Manila very well. Manila was too much for them. They came from a small barrio. So because they were normal in the barrio, but abnormal in Manila, that kind of thing. And we're gonna be leading into and while we're going through this study, ask questions. That's one thing I want you to do. Ask me. don't ask one of the other of you. Don't ask among yourself. Don't wait to ask something with somebody else because they may not be clear either. So you don't
Yes, sir.
want to. I don't really care how much your questions are or what they are. I would rather you listen to them. So I also learn you through these studies. And this is counseling studies are not always the easiest ones to get across. And because you
Yes, sir.
have so much variables.
Hi, sir.
Yeah.
Since this is a crisis counseling, so our question must be from the problematic families or from premarital counseling, or what will be
This we're
our
dealing with
subject?
is just going to be dealing with a crisis and we're going to introduce to counseling and then the crisis counseling will, but a lot of it will bring in other parts, other things, family counseling and so on along the way. And so that will be included.
Yeah, we will submit 50 questions. Is that from one family only, or it could be from 3 to 4 families?
Yeah, it just all that, whatever comes and we get it done. The main thing is we're working to get things straight in families and individuals. So that won't matter.
Thank you, sir.
So because some of the things that's happening in our society now, of course, look at the difference between in the Philippines from say 25, 30 years ago to living now among younger people. Look at the differences. And so those are the things that what we see is the changes in our life and our ability to live in those changes, especially in a pluralistic society. The Philippines is very much a pluralistic society, no question about it. And so how is it we deal with these things and these changes in our life? And it happens everywhere. It isn't just Philippines. We're dealing with some. One other thing I want to mention before I get started here is that look, there are quite some nice articles on the internet. Get from reliable sources, but get in there and find out different things, especially the Philippines, and check on things where what is the percentage of people in crisis in the Philippines. There's several websites you can go to. You can go to Filipino Health Society. You got the counseling service. You got psychiatrists. Abnormal. There's all kinds of different deals you can go to on the internet and get a good perspective of what's going on. One of mine that I found was about 60% of Filipinos are in an abnormal lifestyle and have their manners and their life is kind of a mess. And then I found out narcissism in the Philippines is pretty high. And we'll go through some of that as we go along. So, but get on the internet and see what it is so that you know where people in the Philippines are, the way they're living and how they're living. Okay. This first study on Introduction to Counseling is designed to acquaint the student to areas that will help the counselor consider the behavior and attitude necessary to minister to the people. So it's a good thing to understand where the people are at, and preaching on Sunday can help. And I know some preachers do their counseling through the preaching. And when I checked them out, almost all of those churches are in mega church numbers, because I think that their preaching is helping the people. So we're going to learn some things, or at least hopefully, that's going to help us prepare for the future and to help our people along the way. The study will focus on basic margins for a proper counseling approach to abnormal or a disturbance in the family. The importance of this study is to introduce a perspective for entering a counseling session. This study can help you discover basic preparation and guidelines to frame the way you will structure your counseling ministry. The Bible is our standard for all counseling. And we hopefully we can learn in here at what point do we talk about God with people, because sometimes we have Christian or church member and we have non-church member. So we have to know where we're at. We have to know where we're at and the people are before we can lead them to Christ or talk about Christ. Number one is what the counselor brings to the counseling session. Now I'm going to look now at his personal standards. And I have 8 different areas that are involved in the counseling session, and that is the traits or the behavior or the ideas of the counselor. And these things are important because generally within the first 2 minutes that someone comes in to talk to you, they make their decision already about how they're going to relate to you. One of the things the counselor brings into the counseling session is his own experience. Regardless of his good or bad experiences, we need to watch out and be very careful for our prejudice in each situation. We can't become, in other words, we can't make up our mind before we talk to them. And so let's look here at John chapter 4. You got it? Well, yeah, that's one thing. Bring your Bible to these studies. Anyway, this is the woman of Samaria. And she came and Jesus tells her, I'll just shorten it, that you need to drink of another water. She went to the well and he said, you need to drink of another water. And then she said, are you greater than our father? And you gave us the well to drink out of it, and his sons and his cattle. And Jesus said, everyone who drinks of this water will thirst again, but that is the water from the well. But whoever drinks of the water that I give shall never thirst, but the water that I will give him shall become in a well, I'm sorry, springing, a well of water springing from uh, to eternal life. And you go on. So I'm going to put down there John chapter 4, verse 1 to 11. I mean, through that chapter. Chapter 8, verse 1 to 11. Luke 19, verses 1 to 10. You get all that?
Yes.
Yeah.
So John 4, 1 to 11, John 8, 1 to 11, then Luke 19, 1 to 10.
Okay. So he brings in his own experiences, what he's done and what he's able to give and what he's able. You have to know yourself a little bit, because what you are, or what you know, is what you bring into the counseling session. His own training, and so his experiences, his education is mixed with what God intends for us to do. Yeah. The counselor, if we're going to do, if we're talking about a preacher doing this, you got to know your skills and your counseling skills. And one of the things is that about counseling, and at this point in your skills, is that this is also a discipline. And you've got to be able to make decisions. One of the things that you'll have to stop is like I know when I ask some of you a question, oftentimes you will refer, oh, the same as dong or the same as whatever. That didn't ask that, ask you the question. You have to answer it. You have to discipline yourself to be able to learn and be able to handle the people when they're sitting there in front of you. You have got to be able to give them an answer, and you've got to be able to, and that comes from your living, your way you live and the way you learn. Those things are important. Also, you want to know the attitude toward people. One of the things that can happen and happens with preachers, they get to a certain point, is what they come to what's called a burnout. And they really get tired of people, but they go through the emotions. And they go through all the motions, but they really lack the patience, and they really lost it with the people. So they got to continue to have compassion. That's number 4. Along with that, put Mark chapter 6, verse 34. Mark 6, 34. Luke 6, verse 36. And then you want to make, and you generally in the first session, it's kind of hard sometimes, but a second session, you should be able to determine and at what point, or to be, I'm sorry, at least to establish your goals for that session. I set everything up on six sessions, but some don't worry about it. They just go on, but they approach it differently than I do, and they'll go on for 2, 3 months, 6 months. So you have to be careful how you do it. And I'm saying this, that um, salvation, at least the first station, is not always your main thing you're reaching for. Sometimes you got to wait 3 or 4 times meetings before you can set a goal and talk about salvation. Because if somebody's not living in and by the Christian standards, it's very hard for them to mix church to church with their problem. Do you follow me? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Number one, now I'm talking from my point of view on how that I approach it. And I will share approaches by others, what they do, and then you make up your mind. Because you have to discover who you are and what's your quality when you go into into counseling. And so, but I think that there's a kind of a first things first. And number one for me is to establish the rapport with the people. Mark chapter 10, verse 26 and 27. The sixth item is personality traits. You need to learn where you're at. What is your qualities? What is it you're able to contribute? How do you look at them? And some are looking at themselves like, I'm the preacher, I'm the counselor, and they miss the whole thing. For me, the main thing is as quickly as possible to begin to establish some type of relationship and with compassion. Having some kind of feelings for the people in their relationship and their life, whatever it might be. And this is a good place to hear when you're dealing with somebody like that, is to discover where they're at, what you can do, and so on by questions. Number 7, the counselor, the preacher, or the counselor needs to own his own adjustments. How did he adjust to the situation and conditions from where he grew up? Sometimes a guy, he has his own prejudiced views, talking to people based upon what it was like for him to grow up. And that may not be good. But he has to know and understand his life, his quality, by the adjustments he had to make. Because believe me, in counseling sessions, the counselor often brings in things what I learned, what I did, and that kind of thing. So you want to be careful of that. Number 8, faith and commitment. How much and when can you bring into counseling your faith and commitment? And it's not going to be talking about his commitment upon what is necessary to have a faith and commitment. Because now you're trying to get to the point for them to accept their own responsibility. John chapter 5. They need to learn how to learn their own responsibility. John 5, 1-6. Mark chapter 10, verse 51. And as I said before, number 9 would be to know the correct timing. Luke chapter 6, verse 45-49. Luke 6, 45-49. And number 10, the counselor should bring hope that leads them to take responsibility. And so if you're going to be counsel somebody, you have to learn yourself at what timing, what is it I can say or do, what can they accept that for them to take their own responsibility. Because when a person comes to have the problem, it's generally somebody else's fault or a whole lot of other different issues, but they're not accepting their own responsibility. And sometimes that's as a result of their background, how they grew up, what did parents say, so whatever. But there's a whole lot of different matters there, and you have to work it out. The next second major area is, what does the counselee, the client or the person, bring into the counseling session? What does the counselee or the client bring to the counseling session? That is their hurts, their pains, and their frustration. Number one thing I have is if it's the immediate problem, something just came up yesterday and got them going, but that may not be the real root. They may have gotten in a fight with their husband or their wife or a neighbor or whatever it might be, and so that got them to see a problem that they can't solve. They may want to talk about it, but it may not be the real root of the problem. It's what we call a trigger. That's what triggered their emotion. What it may be is only the most recent matter or issue. But the real problem may be buried a little bit. But the trigger was just a little more than they want right now. The other was deeper inside, but they were handling that. They've been that way for maybe 5 years. But then another issue come up today, and that was the trigger that just disturbed them. You understand what I'm saying with that?
Yes, sir.
You understand what I'm saying?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
In other words, the new pain or new hurt or new disturbance could bring out the old hurts.
Yeah, but the most defensive way in counseling is not to face the angry clients.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, if the client,
But sometimes you get into a counseling session and you're talking about what happened to them yesterday. But with the right questions, it
But-
may lead you that it's a hurt that they've had for 5, 10 years.
but the client is angry, it is better not to face them or talk to them.
What's that? Say it again.
If the client is angry, so it is better not to talk to them.
If they're angry,
Yeah,
that's where you learn to ask questions,
because no,
because you can get them to do. I had one about several months ago, and it was hard because I couldn't do anything because of the virus, and couldn't meet in person. But finally we met. But on the phone, I discovered some things, but I couldn't say anything because this woman would object. But she'd been married, I think it was 12 years. And they had a nice home, two nice kids, everything looked great. If you looked at this family, fantastic looking family, good attitude. But she was really bothered. And so we got to talking, and I listened to her on 2 stations. I never said a word. She talked the whole time. But what happened was her husband, while they were dating, raped her. And that's why they ended up getting married. She was too ashamed not to because she was afraid of being pregnant. And she couldn't face people being pregnant, not married. So she married him. But all these years, she's had a resentment to him. And the whole thing that come out is now the children are bigger, and they're not little children anymore. They're teenagers. And so now she feels more free to open up. And now she's opening up, and she didn't know whether to divorce her husband, put him in jail, or what. So there you are. There's a hurt that's been going on. I think it was something like 12, 13 years that she was carrying that hurt, but nobody knew it. So sometimes you have to be very careful when they come in. Like when she first started talking to me, she just said, "I'm just not happy with marriage." And it wasn't the marriage that was the problem. It was the rape years before. So it just usually if a person wants to talk, they got some other problem a little bit more than what they're saying. Okay, the number 2 is you want to get the background, get the client's background as much as you can. And if you get and don't believe that that's necessarily everything there. They probably on the first visit won't tell you everything. They will lie. They will exaggerate. They'll get everything except what is the real thing. So sometimes you just take the information and then let it go. You should be able to discover that in the next 2 stations, what is really going on here. And it's amazing because when a person comes in, they're going to give it to you as they see it and as they understand and as what they want to do for them to look good. So, but anyway, on a background, and you're getting a background, be careful how you would challenge it. Sometimes I just say, let me understand this, and I'll repeat it. And sometimes when they repeat it, then it's a lot different, sometimes quite different, or more stuff added to it. So I don't take that information as gospel truth, but I take it as a starting place for me to ask questions. See, in the second visit, I've usually gotten at least 25 questions that I've asked. Number 3, the client's previous experience. Previous experience. And let him talk, because he may have many negatives, of which some of that may be true. Some of it may not be too true. So you have to be very careful. But as time goes on, and some of these hurts and pains and experiences have been hidden. I'm sorry, I have to question myself on my language, because my teeth don't fit anymore. And so I'm doing the best I can, but I hope I'm saying words you understand.
Yeah, we understand, sir.
Okay. But its previous experience could have been hidden for years. And some things, when he's telling you, may or may not be exactly true or the way it was. And some things you understand is time is 10 years ago, 15 years ago, and it may not be exactly clear as it was on the actual event, but his previous experiences may have been hidden for a long time because he don't want anyone to know. His lifestyle may have been different. A lot of things that could have been. We had a guy here not long ago. Was well, I think it was this year. He was sent to prison, and he's 80 some years old for a killing he'd done when he was something like 20 years old. But all these years he's been hiding that, and he couldn't take it anymore. Married, children, grandchildren, good on the job, everything about him was a good man. But he had changed his life, and but he couldn't live with it anymore. And I thought that was kind of interesting. And okay. Number 4 I have is their expectations. Sometimes expectations are great and what the counselor can do for them. I hope you're getting all this down. Get ready for tests. Oh, I forgot to tell you, all your work has to be 80% or more. Now's a good time to tell you. Sorry about that. But anyway, but sometimes they'll make an appointment and I need help and I'm very disturbed, or marriage is bad things with the kids, all kinds. They come in, sometimes just let them talk. I've had them many times come in and talk for an hour and then get up and ready to leave and say, thank you for your advice. I haven't said a word. They just talk themselves into what's right and what's wrong. But that sometimes is all they need, is just someone to talk to. Number 6 is religious resources.
Number 6, no, but number 5.
I got number 1's immediate problem. Number 2 is his background. Number 3 is his previous experience. Number 4 is their expectations. Oh, number 5, yes, is self-image.
Oh, wag ka maging
The self-image. The person may have low esteem and he's just looking for approval. Self-image and low esteem, because he may just come see you for some kind of approval. He wants someone to like him, someone to believe in him, someone to have hope. And they just, and it's amazing sometimes how in marriage, you think a couple marry each other because they love each other and they want to do right. But sometimes one will change and then start beating up on the other one. Not physically, but by the word. You're no good, you're lazy, you're no good, you're dumb, you don't have a good job. There's all kinds of different things. And the lowest, his esteem and feeling worthy. See, I'll discuss this a little later, but where the Christian counselor has I think a stronger position than does a regular counselor, is because you can give hope. You can give him a sense of worth. You're really worth something. You're loved. A lot of people love you. All kinds of different ways that you can do this and say this. But he probably, and that's one of the things you should be able to discover this on the first session, because he just simply is looking for some approval. We call that person is feeling lower than dirt. He doesn't feel like he's not worth anything. Number 6, religious resources. And so the things about your saying or any other type of help for that person, you want to do the best you can, that it is adequate. It is the right amount of good stuff. But you sometimes have to watch when to bring in the God stuff.
Why is that, sir? Sir,
Yeah.
why is that? You're careful to give the religious stuff.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Why is it that we need to be careful to give religious stuff to the counseling?
Yeah. Yeah, you want to be very careful, because this is why you want to know a little bit about their background. If they've never been a church person, if they had hurts like years going before this, they went to church, but they got hurt by church people, or they got a divorce. Where was God when we were having a divorce? So their outlook on Christ in the church sometimes is not what it ought to be, but you may have to wait to get that across and then talk to them about their relationship with God. But and then they've been taught that, in other words, they might be, well, I call them a non-believer. And they don't believe in God, and they can't understand how this would all work. So you want to be careful when to get that across, because you can run them away.
Okay.
I sent a young man, I didn't have time for him because I could sense he's going to be longer than 5 weeks. So he went, recommended the Baptist church counselor, and he went to see him. And I thought this guy would be probably pretty good because he's in a big church, 20,000 people. So he's got to be good. So the young man went in there to see him. When I got back from a trip, I asked him, how'd it go? And he said, I'll never go to a counselor again. And because the first question the counselor at the Baptist church asked him was, are you a believer? And he said, no. And he condemned him for it and started preaching Christ and said, that's your whole problem and everything. And he never, as far as I know today, he'll never go to another church. And that's not what, so the timing on this, Dong, is very, very, very important.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Now with a church person, you can maybe, it's not big a problem, but if somebody that doesn't go to church, you have to be very careful when to start talking about God.
Okay.
Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes, thank you. Yeah.
Sometimes
Just want
when
to
you,
clarify.
with that idea, Dong, sometimes I feel guilty and bad because I didn't talk about God earlier, but I was a little, I would rather him come back another time because then I might have more time. But so it's a tough decision, and this is why you got to get all this stuff in pretty good shape, because there's so many different things. This is not something that just automatically works out. What's the limitation of the client? Number 7.
Okay.
And so here, when I'm talking about their limitations, I'm going to look at what point are their ends, ENDS. So sometimes a person gets to a point and he says, you know, it's just hopeless. There's no need. He sees everything as an end.
Hopeless.
Huh?
He is hopeless.
Yeah, it almost seems that way because his experiences has not allowed him or given them a reason to believe. Now, this could even be a church person. Church people are not an exception. Many of our big churches have their own counselors because of counseling with the church people, because they have a lot of problems. And I've done it, and I know here in the Philippines, the same thing, because I have talked with many in different churches, and the problems are the same. The preacher has no idea, but the people go to church. And why do people go to churches? Can you list 4 or 5 different areas?
Many, plenty,
Huh?
plenty.
What did you say?
There are many reason or plenty of reason.
Okay. Well, some
Yeah.
of it, that's where their friends go. They got used to it. They like the services. Um, uh, there's a lot of different reasons why they go to church, but they still don't know the real reason why you should go to church. And they're sitting there with all these problems. You'd be surprised some of the people I've talked with in the Philippines in my 30 years working in the Philippines, something like that. And of listening to people. One of the things I found with a lot of younger people was that the older ones kept telling them they were stupid. So they grow up thinking they're stupid. And the next one is the strengths of a client. Here's where that sometimes I can get started with them in a good way, is I try to find their strengths. Because if they've not been growing up believing they can do anything, they may not know their strength. And it's ironic, about 2 years ago, or maybe 3, I counseled a man that was 80 years old. And he'd been having some real bad thoughts, he said, for 30, 40 years. And but this goes back to his childhood, because his parents didn't talk much. But what he was guilty of, his daughter died at a young age, like 35 or 40, and now he gets guilty because he never told her he loved her, and a few other things, but he didn't grow up with all that. So I helped him through that, and he's still living, and I think he's a year or 2 younger than I am, and he's doing pretty good. But it took me a little while to figure him out. I couldn't figure out what this man. He retired from a great job and big retirement money, and I'm thinking, what in the world is his problem? So it's about time to quit.
Yes, sir, maybe.
Okay, let me finish this one thought, and then we'll start a new program, new tomorrow. But
No class
anyway,
tomorrow, sir.
huh? I don't mean tomorrow, next time.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, next Thursday. So, and there'll probably be an exam, a test next week, the next time. There'll be a test the next time. And then, but here, finishing this idea on the strength, sometimes a person is down and feeling bad because they don't know their strength. They've been just going through life and not see it. We'll pick up, review, any questions? That's just kind of looking a little bit about the counselor and the counselee, a little bit of attitude. And we're going to talk next time. I'm going to start on counseling relationships. And well, one of the big keys on counseling is taking good notes. I mean good notes. because you get in and there's so many variables in counseling, and you don't want to miss some of that. But anyway, that's not many. You should have had about 5-8 pages by this time. Okay, counseling relationships. We'll start our next trip out next Thursday. And
What
again, I'm
kind of-
going to repeat, I'm going to go through till the 17th of December. Also, begin to build your question list that you may want to ask. Guys, there's a guy on the picture on the bottom right, very short hair and glasses, and he's going. I think he's been asleep.
Not yet.
Thank you, boy. We've only got about 100 hours more to go.
The kind of assignment.
Huh?
Do you have the notes? May notes na kama? You have the notes? This class?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Wala man ko.
This one here is not critical, but when I start the next session, and when I get into crisis counseling, I am serious. You really need to have good notes. But
15
I'm
pages.
sending stuff. They got a book coming called Crisis. I haven't talked to Wayne about it. I forgot. He found some way to get a book to you, and then I'm going to have a lot of reading. So when I get into crisis counseling, it's going to be a lot of work. You will have to have an hour a day. I don't know how you can do it without it.
Okay.
This is why that the counseling and the training is hard, especially when you're married. So, but I know I went to college to get my degrees.
Samot na niya.
24 years with 5 kids,
Sa?
wife. Thank you. Have a good day. Yeah, it's your, let's see, no, it's your night. Take care.
Thank you.
Adios, amigo.
Salamat. Thank you.
Wes, this is Wayne. Well, let the other guys go off and let you and I talk a minute. All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Guys, have a good afternoon or good evening. We'll talk to you soon.